Good morning. It's 10:06, 6 minutes after 10 o'clock on this Thursday, January 19th, and this is a special public affairs program of WITY Radio. I'm David Brown, and in the studio with us today we have Bill Burnside, State Representative Chad Hayes, and State Senator Mike Frerichs. And we're going to be talking about the proposed casino for Danville. And we're going to open up the phone lines here. If you have a question for Senator Frerichs, State Representative Chad Hayes, or Bill Burnside for that matter, 442-6980 is our telephone number to call. You can jot this down. Once we get the introductions underway here, we will be taking calls. You do not have to give your name, address, or phone number. This is completely anonymous, so we don't want to try to embarrass anyone. We're not tracking calls or anything like that. I know in today's world, a lot of people are concerned about that. So again, you can call in completely anonymous, 442-6980. Jot the number down, and you can ask your question about the proposed casino for Danville. 442-6980. That's 442-6980. And I know Bill will mention that number throughout today's program. Again, 442-6980, and we'll let you know when we'll be accepting the calls this morning. I'm going to turn the microphone over now to Bill Burnside, who is the host of this public affairs program. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, folks. Thank you, Dave. Okay, we have two of our legislators that represent our district right here in Danville, Illinois, and around our surroundings. One is State Senator Mike Frerichs and State Representative Chad Hayes. What I'm going to do to start with is have each of those gentlemen introduce themselves as to where they come from, something about their family, how they got into the legislators, and how they came to vote as they did on the casino gambling bill for Danville, which the governor has indicated he would not sign. So to start with, the senior among us is Senator Mike Frerichs. So he's been in the office the longest,
okay.
So I'm going to call upon him to start this, and then we'll go to State Representative Chad Hayes.
Well, I may be senior in office, and with the gray hairs, I may look like a senior in age.
I didn't mean that.
But thank you very much, Bill. Thank you, David. Thanks for having us on here today. It's a good opportunity to talk with our constituents and hear from them. You want to get a little bit of background of where we come from. I grew up in the big city of Gifford, Illinois.
Right.
A lot of your listeners may not know where Gifford is, but Gifford knows this station because of the excellent work you guys do with agricultural programming. And I grew up in a farm family. My dad grew up on a farm just south of Penfield. My mom grew up just outside of Gifford. Families were involved in agriculture, but they didn't have an awful lot of land. So my dad didn't have the opportunity to practice farming full time, so he went to work at a grain elevator in Penfield, Illinois, and then went to work at a grain elevator in Royal, Illinois. We're running through all the big cities of northeast Champaign County through my family. My dad ended up driving a truck for Osterber Trucking. Spends a lot of time over here in Vermilion County, especially over by Fairmount, out by the quarry. That's the family I grew up in. My mom was a stay-at-home mom when I was growing up. Eventually went back to work at the university as a secretary. And like a lot of people growing up in this area, you're 16, 17 years old, you want to get away from here. And so I went out east to school. I spent some time living abroad, but eventually came back, and just like that old Mark Twain saying about when he was 14 years old, I'll paraphrase, he thought that his old man was the most ignorant, backwards, know-nothing he had ever met before. But by the time he was 21, he was really impressed with how much his father had learned and grown and matured in those 7 years he was gone. The same thing here. I came back to the area and decided that this is a place worth staying at. My family and friends gave and sacrificed an awful lot for me, and decided I wanted to come back here and start my family here. And I figured if I was going to do that, one of the things I wanted to do was make sure it was one of the best places to live, and that people had opportunities to stay here. You didn't have kids like me here in Vermilion County who graduate and leave the area looking for jobs and don't come back. And we've had a real brain drain, and that's one of the big concerns I've had. I got away, but came back. Want to make sure that people who want to stay here, who want to raise families here in Vermilion County, have those opportunities. I guess that leads into one of the reasons why I've supported this bill that came through, the gambling bill. There have been several different bills that have been introduced. We can talk various different details, but one of the things that I think is important is to make sure there's economic vitality here in Vermilion County. And I think that by having a casino here in Danville, simply easy to see, it would bring probably about 700 to 800 well-paying jobs here at this area. It wouldn't employ everyone who needed something. It wouldn't be the job for every person out there. But the other thing that casinos do, and if you look at other parts of the state that have gotten them, they generate revenue from outside of their area. So we'd bring in an awful lot of money from outside of Vermilion County. And one of the things I see, you'd bring a lot of money in from Indiana, just across the border. That money, some of it goes in the pockets of the casino owners. Some of it comes to the state of Illinois, which I think needs that revenue. But some of it would stay right here in Vermilion County, would be invested in our schools, in our roads, in our bridges, would it be invested in our police force. And so I think that's why a lot of people see it as a very positive thing for the area. And they came to me and said, could you support this? Now, a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in a family raised in the church. I didn't gamble. I personally don't find much enjoyment from gambling. The anxiety of the money I'm going to lose does not outweigh the joy I would get from winning. But not everyone's like that. Some people want to. And if they want to choose to do that, I'd rather see them choose to do it in a controlled environment where there's some oversight here around here than going across the state border in Indiana and leaving their money there where they have legalized gambling. And so enough of my constituents came to me that even though I personally probably would not spend very much money at a casino, got me to agree to support it because that's what a lot of my constituents wanted. A lot of them communicated with me. And at the end of the day, frequently, I see my job is to represent my constituents, the constituents in Champaign and Vermilion County. And I think that in supporting this bill, it's what the majority of my constituents over here in Vermilion County want.
Okay. And thank you very much, Senator Frerichs. And we also now are going to hear from Representative Chad Hayes. And would you continue similar?
Absolutely, and I appreciate so much you having me on this morning. I am a sixth generation Vermilion County native. My father grew up on a farm as well, a little north of Fithian, Illinois. My mother is a Hoosier from just across the state line in little tiny Gessie, Indiana, and her family were farmers as well. My father worked for his entire professional working career at Illinois Power, the Newtown coal generating station, power generating station. My mother was a nurse practitioner at the VA and always took such pride in working with our wonderful veterans there. My wife is also a nurse. She's a nurse at our local VA medical center and works in the clinic where they do the intake for our veterans coming back from the Middle East and any of our veterans who have been prisoners of war. We have 3 children. My older sons are my stepsons, who are both mercifully out of college at this point in time. One is in a graduate program in Florida to become a physical therapist. The middle, Caleb, and his lovely wife have just blessed us about 5 months ago with our first grandchild, and certainly that brings new perspective to how wonderful life can be. And then we have a 15-year-old who is a freshman at Catlin High School, so we are doing another tour of duty with football and basketball and Scholastic Bowl and everything that brings with it. Personally, I became involved in elective office kind of like the senator said. I went away to college. I thought I was passing through. The next thing you know, I was fortunate enough to be elected mayor of my hometown, which is Catlin, Illinois. And I was mayor of Catlin at 28, I think. At the time, I was the youngest mayor in the state of Illinois, and that's something that I just thoroughly enjoyed, working with the terrific people there. I professionally have worked in healthcare. I've been an administrator for physician group practices. In the last 15 years before I was elected, I worked for Provena United Samaritan Medical Center. I was a vice president there, ran our foundation, our community outreach efforts, etc. As it relates to the gaming bill, for me, when I talk about the bill, I really talk less about gaming than the economic impact and the impact as it relates to jobs. You're talking about an investment and a private investment, and that's something that I think is important. There are no incentives here. We're not giving any tax breaks. We're not giving any property tax abatement. This is entirely private sector investment, several $100 million. We will put to work 375 or so people out of our union hall, some of which are traveling as far as Evansville and even further to find work. work. Most of our locals are not even located in Vermilion County anymore because of the struggle over the last 20 years or so in terms of work. In addition, there would be 750 to 800 jobs that pay well, that pay above the median income for Vermilion County and for the community of Danville. You know, we've lost 29% of the population in Danville since 1970. 1 in 4 people in Vermilion County no longer live in Vermilion County, and the list, unfortunately, it's fairly long in terms of big employers that have left. From my perspective, there are few things, perhaps nothing, that will bring more dignity to an individual and more dignity to a family than a job. There are few things that will have a longer lasting impact on a child than seeing a parent or guardian get ready to go to work every single day. I remember the impact that had on me when I was a child. When you're a small child, you really don't have any idea what your parents do for a living. But I remember vividly my father getting up in the morning, having a cup of coffee, getting ready to go to work every single day, and I remember him coming home. And I think that really has been a guidepost in my life for my entire life because of the dignity that brought to our family. And for me, that's what this is really about.
Thank you both, gentlemen, and I appreciate your comments as to your backgrounds, to what got you involved in the casino gambling or revenue type of bill that's been forthwith to possibly have the governor sign, which he has indicated he would not. And I wondered if, since we're here for that particular reason, if you have any idea or insight, since we know that the governor will not sign that bill as it was originally created. Is there any type of a compromise bill or a decoupling effort going on since you're going to go into your new session?
Sure. I would say there's still lots of discussions going on, trying to find some sort of compromise. I think just yesterday was a meeting that Representative Hayes can talk to a little better than I can, trying to find alternate ways of supporting our horse racing industry here in the state of Illinois that wouldn't involve slot machines at tracks. And that's the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about. We've talked an awful lot about the benefit of a casino here in Danville, but that bill was more than just casinos. It also had support in there for the racing industry in the state of Illinois, and some people may choose never to go see a horse race, and they say there's no tracks here near Vermilion County. How does that benefit us? The horse racing industry supports agriculture throughout the state of Illinois. There are people raising horses here in my district, in Representative Hayes' district, and those people buy feed from local farmers, and I think that's why you saw groups like the Farm Bureau supportive of this measure as well. Some of that money raised from this bill would have also gone to fund programs like Soil and Water Conservation Foundation, Exchange Club, or Exchange. 4-H and cooperative extension is what the word I was looking for, that's also very helpful to downstate Illinois. And so we're trying to find some sort of way to get the governor to agree to support it, but also make sure we have support for downstate and agriculture in the state of Illinois.
Thank you. And what would you comment, Mr. Hayes?
And kind of piggybacking on what the senator was saying, county fairs, there were some dollars in the bill to assist county fairs throughout the state as well. The connection, as we talked about previously before we went on the air, the connection between the horse industry and agriculture is very strong. And on the original bill that was voted on in the spring, if you take the slots at the tracks, or the racinos as they're commonly called, out of that bill, I would estimate that you would lose probably 15 to 18 votes. There were many votes on that bill from downstate individuals, people who didn't have gaming expansion in their district, et cetera, who voted for the bill because of those things that are important to them: the horse racing industry, agriculture, soil and water conservation districts, and the things that the senator just discussed. I was at a meeting yesterday, just as listening in, so to speak, where there was a discussion about where do we go from here. One of the positive developments from my perspective, the governor essentially set out the discussion for all of 2011, and I know that's something that was frustrating to many. I participated with the senator, with the mayor of Danville, and an entire contingent, labor leaders, economic development professionals, former Representative Black, law enforcement officials, and we met with the governor personally last year. in July, and we outlined the case for Danville. One of the things that I think is positive from my perspective, the governor suggested that he understands the Danville dynamic. We're not close to anybody else. We're on the state line. We have a study that indicates over 60% of the revenue would come across the state line from Indiana. And he has made public statements that Danville makes sense, if you will, in the context of gaming. But this slots at the tracks is an issue. I thought there was some positive progress yesterday, as the senator indicated. I think everybody is now looking for an avenue that perhaps there would not be the slots at the tracks, but there could be some new revenue, and new revenue not taking away from anything else in the state to help the horse industry, and we can get there. The governor has appointed a gentleman by the name of Gary Hanig, who was a state representative for many years from the Litchfield area, to participate in the discussions. One of the things that I think former Representative Hanig brings, and he also, was formerly the director of the Illinois Department of Transportation. He's a downstater, and more importantly, he understands the legislature and the legislative process. And one of the things that I hear commonly from Republicans and Democrats alike is a little bit of frustration with our current governor. The current governor didn't serve in the legislature, and sometimes there's been some frustration in terms of him not being as engaged with a lot of different issues as people in the legislature might hope for. So I think former Representative Hanig being in the discussion and representing the governor is a positive thing, and certainly that was my takeaway from yesterday. So I know those groups are meeting again as soon as next week. I know the group that's been appointed by the leaders in the Senate and the House are meeting again, I think, on the second day when we're back into session. So I think it's entirely possible, and I say possible, that there could be a new bill with some new dynamics that could occur this spring.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about, because we were hearing some things that indicated something has to change from what's currently being proposed. Going into whatever does happen in the future, we're not sure, but I've had one question pertaining to if things happened and Danville did get what you're talking about, how would that affect our county? Would the revenue go just to Danville, or would it go through the entire Vermilion County area?
So a final bill has not been approved. There could be tweaks to this. I've had several people come to me and saying, hey, could we share in that revenue as well? So a final bill could have changes. But one great thing about Vermilion County is no one here has been greedy. They've all realized we want to work together, and we're going to share in this equally. And there's been revenue sharing, various units of government. What the final bill will have and what the formula will be for sharing is unknown, but it's not something that the city of Danville itself would take all the money and not share with anyone outside of the city limits.
Okay.
My understanding, and the senator's right, obviously it's preliminary to discuss where that is. Danville doesn't even have approval for a license yet. But the discussion there, I think, has been positive. And frankly, it's one of the things that the governor indicated that he liked about the Danville approach, which is the cooperative nature of the leaders of Danville. And I think it's kind of a hallmark of this area, people working together across party lines cooperatively. And what's been talked about would be a revenue sharing. The city of Danville sharing in a portion of that, every public school in Vermilion County sharing in a portion of that on a per capita basis based on enrollment. Danville Area Community College sharing in a portion, and the County of Vermilion sharing in a portion as well. And the governor actually has mentioned more than once he really appreciated that cooperative nature and that kind of spreading it around because I think we're all painfully aware of what happens when you have a decrease in population, you still have a need for services. It puts a huge barrier or has huge impact on the individual taxpayer, and I think most of us are at our brink in terms of what we can do from a property tax perspective. So, for example, it's entirely possible that a school district like Danville District 118 could garner as much as $1 million annually from something like this, and that has dramatic impact as it relates to property taxes.
We might want to give out the phone number again so people know that they shouldn't call Bill's cell phone. We've got a land.
That's right. I apologize for that. I'm sure that's not a caller, but anyway, thank you. Yeah, 442-6980 is the call number that you're invited to call about questions. And while we're waiting on you to call 442-6980, I do have a list of questions here in front of me. One of them pertains to a couple of professors who have published some kind of a preeminent study of casinos, crime, and community cost in 2006, which concluded that crime increases an average of 8 to 10% the third year after casinos open, and that crime continues to increase each year. They found that casinos do not shift crime from neighboring regions, but create crime. What would you suggest you do to increase, or will this increase crime in Danville?
That's a very good question, and I appreciate you asking it. And certainly that's one of the things that I was concerned about and did a little research myself and engaged some of our economic development professionals and specifically our law enforcement professionals. Sheriff Pat Hartshorn, I think one of the very best sheriffs in this state, highly respected by the Illinois Sheriff's Association, Larry Thomason, the public safety director in Danville, and I've had lengthy conversations with them about this. The data that I have, and I'm now looking at all of the locations that were in the initial gaming legislation back in the early 1990s, and looking at major crime, these would be things, categories of murder, criminal, sexual assault, robbery, aggravated battery, attempted murder, etc. Looking at what that rate was in 1991, and then looking at those same communities in 2009. And in every instance, with the exception of Metropolis, and Metropolis is a little bit of an anomaly in that Metropolis is a community that's much smaller than the rest. Metropolis is a community with population roughly the size of Westville, Illinois. So a couple of crimes skew their statistics more than they would a larger community. And going right down the list, the change in those major crimes in Alton, crime down 42% in 2009 versus 1990. Peoria, 34% on those major crimes. Rock Island down, right across the board, every community down and down significantly. Sheriff Hartshorn and Public Safety Director Thomason have been in close contact with communities like Alton, Joliet, et cetera, because they shared the same concern. And what they reported back to me was this. The law enforcement people there said these facilities are lit up like high noon. They have their own security force. So crime at the facility itself is basically non-existent. Right. But they also suggested that the increase in revenue has allowed those communities to hire more police officers to fight crime where it actually exists in their communities. So in a kind of an odd roundabout way, the extra tax revenue has helped them to fight crime and helped them to decrease some of their crime statistics. So I found that to be an interesting revelation that in those communities where we have checked, our law enforcement people report something quite the opposite. And I will tell you that both the public safety director and the sheriff are supportive of this, in part because of that dynamic.
Yeah, I think that you can find some family that because of problems with gambling, it forces them into crime. But I think the much greater impact on crime in a community is poverty. It's that lack of a job that Representative Hayes was talking about, that not only the job brings dignity, but it's that lack of a job that brings desperation that forces crime out there. And I think in Vermilion County you've seen a fair amount of crime because you've got people coming down here in Section 8 housing. They can't find employment, and that I think is a bigger threat to the safety of our community than bringing in a casino. And I think we'd also be fooling ourselves if we said, well, there's no casino here, there's no gambling here in Vermilion County, so therefore there shouldn't be crime associated with that. I think all one has to do is go through some of these rural bars a few years ago, and you saw they had machines out there. If anyone thinks they weren't paying out money, if they weren't doing gambling, they probably get their heads out of the sand. And over in Champaign County, you just saw a week or two ago, they busted a gambling ring out of what appeared to be a warehouse.
Right.
They were running a poker establishment there. So I think, quite frankly, if it's going to be going on, if people are going to want to do this, we should at least have it done in an area where you can oversee this, where you can have signs posted. If you have problems with gambling, you can seek help. You have people there looking over them. I think that's a smarter way to go about it than as has been going on. So I guess we do have some callers who want to talk to us.
We do have a caller.
Okay. Let's take that caller, and this is our On the Air with Senator Mike Frerichs and Representative Chad Hayes. Which one would you like to ask your question to.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, either one of them. My question is, we had a off-track betting thing out east of town, and it's closed now. It's an empty building. And now my question is, though, the supposedly jobs that it's going to bring to Danville after it's built, what kind of pay will these people get? Minimum wage, 20 hours a week? What kind of benefits?
Well, so the belief is that these jobs would pay good wages.
What kind of good wages?
Well, we're talking probably about $35,000, $40,000 a year with benefits. So, enough to raise a family on. People aren't going to get rich working there.
Right.
But there's some people think that, well, these people who work in casinos, they're just dealing cards. They don't make that much money. They make good wages, and they do that because the owners of the casinos, the operators of these places, realize that if you pay people just minimum wage and they don't have enough money to support themselves, support their families, well, then there's this great temptation to steal the money right in front of them. And so they want to pay them well enough so that they can attract good people. They want to do background checks on them. They want to make sure that they feel comfortable, so there's not quite that incentive to engage in crime. It's just smart business practice on behalf of the owners.
Yeah. Now, who actually owns the casino? The state or the city? Or
The licenses would actually be purchased. So the license in Danville, and again, this would have to be worked out. It's too soon to tell, but certainly someone who would be in the gaming business would likely be an applicant for the license, and the license up front would cost several $1 million. And then, of course, all of the investment again would be private sector investment. So there would be no land deals. There would be no tax incentives. In fact, they would be taxed heavily on the back end. Probably I don't think there would be another entity in the state of Illinois that's taxed more heavily than these gaming establishments. And there was a comment from a suburban leader in our state who suggested that, these jobs don't pay enough. We're not interested in those. And I said, speak for yourself. In an area that has had unemployment as high as 18 to 20% in the last 20 years and as high as 13% in the last couple of years, we are not in a situation to say we are not interested in 750 jobs that will pay over the median income of the average worker in this county.
Yeah, so the one thing you could be assured of is the state's not going to own this casino. The city's not going to own the casino. We don't know who is going to own the casino because they would have to bid on this. It's letting the free market decide. You could have an individual, a group of individuals put together some money, but chances are someone with experience in the industry would be, if they didn't have the license, would be brought in to manage it.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate your answers.
Thank you very much. That brings up another question that I've had posed to me, and that is, along his line, and along with what you just said, this will be privately owned. We don't know who or if, but if it is owned, how are we going to know for sure that these people will employ Vermilion County residents on some of these jobs? Doesn't that casino operator have a say in who builds the building and who might be some of these jobs we're talking about of 700 or 800?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the advantages we have here in Vermilion County would be proximity. There's no doubt in my mind some folks across the border would apply. Right. Some people from Iroquois County, from Edgar County, might want to drive that distance, but they'd be most attracted to people who have a shorter commute. As you see with gas prices over $3 a gallon, sometimes reaching as high as $4 a gallon, we're going to have a distinct advantage in hiring people from Champaign County or from Vermilion County over the people in Champaign, Ford, Iroquois, right, who've got to drive 40 miles, 50 miles to get there.
I'm talking about not what you're talking about exactly, but a lot of times these people have their own crews. For instance, Walmart employs people that are contracted to them. They may drive 150 to 200 miles to build a new Walmart store. Is that a possibility with these casino operators or owners?
Well, certainly when you have a private individual, just like in any other business, they would make the decisions in relation to that. But I think it goes without saying, number one, I think there will be interest if Danville ends up with a license. I think there will be interest. There are folks who run these kinds of facilities in small to medium-sized markets in other states and have experience in doing that. And so it's highly likely that if not the owner, then somebody who is managing the operation, would do it like as with any other business. You would come with somebody who has that kind of business acumen behind them. But the overwhelming majority of the jobs I think, would be citizens locally right here in Vermilion County for a lot of the reasons that the senator suggested. But certainly I would be right in the front of the line, seriously urging the use of local contractors, the use of local labor halls, etc. All of the labor leaders in this area are very, very much on board for this. They're camped out, if you will, in Springfield because they understand how significant it is for their folks not to have to drive to Evansville, Indiana, not have to drive to Terre Haute, not have to drive to as far as Kentucky every day. It would be wonderful to have a project that is several $100 million with our own folks right here working at home.
Right, and there's another call.
Hello?
Yes.
I'd like to speak to this Mike Ferris and Mr. Chad Hayes. I know you both know me. I'm in favor of it. I see down here at the big lots, every Wednesday morning lot, there's 2 big buses. Takes a lot of people over to Peoria there. And I think we need to get this revenue here in this city. Although I'll say one thing, let's make sure that Danville improves because Metropolis, I've read in the paper that they got more money down there and they know what to do. They have many new fire trucks, lots of policemen that takes care of the crime and everything from that. And also one other thing I'd like to point out to you, I understand that the casino could be built out there by Lynchburg or at the end of Bowman Avenue. Now, can you answer any of those questions for me on that? Thank you.
Well, I'll just say thank you for calling in. You make another great point that we should have earlier. For people who say we don't want gambling in Vermilion County, we don't want people from Vermilion County spending their hard-earned money at slot machines, it's already happening. You're right. There are buses that are taking people and they're depositing their money in another community. And so if it's going to happen, I'd like to at least see it stay here in this community and to bring people from other communities into this area. So those people who get on buses, they go and they spend money at the facility, but some people get in their cars and they drive to Peoria, they drive to Joliet, they drive to someplace else. They don't always just go into the casino and then leave. Sometimes they'll stop and fill up with gas in that community. They'll stop and have something to eat in that community. And it helps with economic development. I think you see Jeannie Cook being a supporter of this because she feels it would help the tourism industry here in Vermilion County. There'd be other unintended consequences. In terms of where the casino would be located, once again, it depends who wins the bid. I mean, I know of people who have talked about both those locations. I know another group that was interested in doing something off Perrysville Road. We won't know until a winner is chosen, and Representative Hayes and I don't get to make those decisions. That would be up to the gaming board.
That's correct. And someone mentioned Metropolis, and my wife comes from that general area of Pope County next door to Massac County. Metropolis was the one that I was kind of referring to when I asked about Danville and the Vermilion County Board getting together. It's nice they cooperate, but down there I think they cooperate also. But the city of Metropolis used to blacktop alleys from the money they received from their casino, but the county board in the county of Massac County was broke. And the last I knew, the city of Metropolis was loaning Massac County money.
I think that's accurate. I've actually heard what you just suggested told before, that the cooperative spirit that I was talking about perhaps on the front end didn't happen in Metropolis. And another thing that's always been interesting to me as I read down in relation to crime, those communities that were awarded a facility back when this all came about in 1991, while Metropolis is in fact on the border of another state, it is significantly smaller than any other community that is involved. So I've always thought that was interesting. The other thing that we haven't talked about, back when the original gaming legislation was contemplated and debated, one of the criteria for site selection was trying to assist communities that were in economic distress. And I made the comment to the governor personally that obviously I was not in the legislature then, and the governor was not the governor then. But when you look at unemployment figures, et cetera, particularly back from the early 1990s when we had, unfortunately, unemployment in that 18 to 20% range, it's a mystery to me how Danville was passed over to begin with. Certainly that criteria that was the original criteria would have fit Danville directly. The governor asked me personally when we met, Representative Hayes, do you think I should make this decision based upon that original intent of trying to help economically distressed communities, or should I make it on which communities have the potential to raise the most revenue for the state of Illinois? And obviously his client being the state of Illinois. And I told him, I appreciated the question, and ironically, Danville is a great fit on both fronts for the reason I just articulated in terms of being economically distressed. But there's been a lot of study done on this, indicating that we would get a significant amount of traffic from across the state line in Indiana. And if you look at those communities that have these facilities, Danville would not be at the bottom in terms of gross revenue potential as a metropolis or some of those are. We would really be more in the middle. We potential maybe even higher than Joliet and some of those places that have saturation. We don't really cannibalize anybody else's interest. We're geographically located in a very attractive place. So all of those things, I think, are part of the reason that the governor, although he has trouble with parts of the bill, doesn't really have trouble with Danville. And here's the irony in the entire discussion in Springfield. The folks with the other casinos, et cetera, as you can imagine, are not enamored at all about more competition, but they will sit back and tell you privately, you understand we don't care about Danville, and they mean that in a good way, that you are so remote geographically that you don't hurt us. In fact, you make sense. That's the feedback I get privately.
I would say you're right there. A couple more here that I have that were emailed in. A study commissioned by the National Gambling Impact Study Commission found the rate of gambling addiction doubles within a 50-mile radius of gambling facility. Other studies have shown that the rate of the problem and the pathological gambling is higher for adolescents and veterans. How will a casino and gambling impact students at the University of Illinois and the college areas around here, as well as the veterans who come to the VA Center?
Well, I think in terms of students, that was something that was raised by Leader Radonio, the Republican minority leader in the Senate. And she said, well, this is too close to University of Illinois. Well, University of Illinois is probably, about 40, 45 miles away from some of the proposed places the casino might be located. Representative Hayes is a little more familiar with Southern Illinois and Southern Illinois University, but is it not my understanding that Southern Illinois University is closer to Metropolis Casino than we would be to Champaign-Urbana?
No, I don't think so. It's probably an hour or better drive from Carbondale to Metropolis.
Okay.
One of the I guess I have two. Number one, Bradley University is located in Peoria.
Right.
Certainly Chicago is in this mix, and I don't think it could even be argued that there are not exponentially more college students in the Chicagoland area than there are within a 50-mile radius of Danville, Illinois. I told the governor that both of my older children did attend SIU, a stone's throw from Metropolis, and so I called them, both adults now, and I said, you were both down there cumulatively 9 years. You do that math. That's not the math I was looking for. God bless Caleb, our middle one, got out in 4 years. But I asked them, honestly, I said, you were down there for your entire college career. How many trips did you make to Metropolis? And they said 0. Between the two of them, and they're pretty common adult American males, and they said we didn't go over there at all because the very little expendable income that we had, we did the same thing every other college student did. We went to the SIU basketball game and went out for pizza or whatever we did, but that wasn't even on our radar. They said, frankly, the only people that we knew that were involved in gambling were doing it sitting in their dorm room in their underwear, doing it on the internet. I mean, if we're being honest about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have a lot more concern if the casino were located right in the heart of campus town in Champaign-Urbana. But my experience in undergraduate was I didn't have a car. Places I went were things that were relatively cheap, like when the university would host a movie for $1. Those things I go to. I didn't have a car to drive anywhere. And yes, you will find some students who could do that, but I just don't see it the big problem that some people made it out to be.
Okay. One other one here that came in, and that was a situation that occurred in Des Plaines, Illinois. The police and firemen there are called to assist with problems with the new Rivers Casino, and that appears to be a problem. It says the studies there show that social, regulatory, and criminal justice cost 3 times more than the revenue from the casinos brings in. How can you justify putting a casino in Danville?
Well, I guess I haven't seen those numbers. I mean, and the thing with Des Plaines is it's right in the middle of some other casinos up there. I'm not sure where they get those numbers from, because it's down the road from Elgin. Aurora is not so far away, but I can tell you the mayor of Des Plaines is very happy to have a casino, and he doesn't want anything else coming near it. So if it really were such a big drain on city revenues and not bringing in what it cost him, I couldn't imagine that the mayor would be as supportive of it as he is. And you find that with all these areas. So 20 years ago, lots of communities throughout the state of Illinois went through a lot of internal soul searching, some hand-wringing. Some said we're okay with trying this. Some said that no, we don't want it coming in our communities. But today, when you go to those areas and you talk to legislators from the areas, they are unanimous, and that has been a good thing for their communities. And they don't want to see them go, and they don't really want to see a lot more competition because they know how beneficial it is to their communities.
Okay, thank you, Senator Frerichs. We're getting around here to about 3 minutes to go. If you two gentlemen would like to wrap this up with any other comments, feel free.
You know, one of the things that I guess I would add is I've had the privilege for the better part of 20 years. When I was a younger man and mayor of Catlin, I represented the mayors from around Vermilion County on the Danville Area Economic Development Board, now Vermilion Advantage. And I've had the opportunity to talk to people who are looking to invest in our community, bring jobs to our community, et cetera. And I think it's important to recognize that this is one project out of many that we are working on. I certainly do not think that we spend energy and effort on this at the expense of anything else. There are a lot of spokes in that wheel, and there are a lot of things we need to do. And this program really isn't about business climate and business environment in Illinois, and maybe that's a good program for down the road. But there's really a lot of work to do in this state as it relates to business climate, et cetera. And we really are working hard on it. And one of the things that, again, is a hallmark of this community is a lot of people pulling together in a way you just don't see everywhere. I get that comment a lot, that you have cooperation in the Danville area that simply does not exist everywhere in this state. And so I want people to understand that we are working on a lot of fronts, because I think jobs are absolutely pivotal. We've talked about the dignity. We've talked about what it means to a family, to a child, and we've also talked about the impact on crime. I mean, when you're talking about crime, the evidence is in over several decades that the higher the unemployment rate, the higher the crime rate. And so jobs, a lot of times we say there's no silver bullet. Well, if there is a silver bullet as it relates to East Central Illinois, it's in economic growth and jobs.
Okay. Senator Frerichs?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having us on here today. I know that all of our constituents aren't going to agree on this issue. There's room for diversity of opinions. But one of the things I have been really impressed with, as Representative Hayes said, is the number of people pulling together here. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the city, it's the county, it's the business groups, the labor unions, it's our schools, our educators, and they realize the value of this and work together, and that's impressed a lot of folks. And, you know, I'm not sure people in Vermilion County realize how unique that is, people working together. You know, you've got on your program here today a Republican and a Democrat, and Representative Hayes has been great to work with. I worked very well with Representative Black. He was a great mentor to me, but Chad has stepped right on in his shoes and carried the water from Vermilion County very well, and that's another unique thing that you don't see through all parts of the state. That I'm glad we can be here and hopefully continue to talk more in the future with our constituents together.
Thank you. And last word, Representative Hayes.
Well, and I appreciate those words from Senator Frerichs, and certainly that's been my experience as well, that we have a very positive professional working relationship. We talk a lot about issues that are important to our common constituents. We don't always vote the same, and certainly I would never ask him not to vote his conscience, and he would do the same. But we do have a very positive working relationship. The other thing I wanted to say was, I know there are people out there who are philosophically or morally against gaming, and I would never ask anybody to support this that has a moral or philosophical objection. I respect that, and I concede that point out of hand. And I think it's important to say that this is an issue where there's plenty of room for disagreement and plenty of room for people who have a differing opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, listening audience, for being with us today where you're on the air with Senator Frerichs and Representative Hayes.
I do want to remind our listeners, Bill, I think in a couple of weeks you have another program
Yes,
planned.
we will be having the counterpoint of casino gambling in Danville on February the 2nd at 10 o'clock.
All right. Thank you again, Senator Frerichs and Representative Hayes, for being with us today. On behalf of everyone here at WITY, we thank you, listeners, for listening today, and for those that called in and for those that sent in the letters or the emails with questions. Again, we'll have a program 2 weeks from today talking with other concerned citizens here in the community about the proposed casino for Danville. For this special public affairs program, this is David Brown.